Okay, we're going to kick into the second part. This is my new thing. I am saving them a microphone today. I actually like it. So we're gonna jump in. Hopefully everybody had a break, had a good lunch. You're in the network transformation stream of digital transformation world 2019, and we're gonna hear a bunch of presentations today, all through closed loop, cloud native infrastructures, and a whole bunch of other interesting things. Some things to remember: use Slido. Go into Slido DTW 2019 and get into network transformation, where you can actually post some questions, and we will try to answer those questions. Really important to thank you to our sponsors. Without them, this wouldn't be here. And with that, basically, I'd like to welcome Susan White from Netcracker, and she's going to tell you about herself and about what she's going to talk about. Thank you, Susan.
Hey. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Is it? Yeah. So, yes, I'm Sue White from Netcracker. I head up portfolio marketing and strategy for SDN and NFV. And what I really want to talk about today is what the new operations environment is going to be if we're really going to succeed with automation. Because we're doing little bits and pieces today, especially as we move to virtualization. And what I mean by a new operational environment, it's going to be obviously some new orchestration processes, but it's also going to be an evolved OSS as well. And what I'd like to do is use SD-WAN as an example. Only because SD-WAN is great in that it covers physical and virtual. It's something a lot of service providers are actually deploying today, but they're also very challenged in taking it to the next stage. The deployments have happened, but how you actually scale that and how you truly automate that at the service level and do more with it, that's what we're finding our customers are struggling with. So I want to do a bit of a case study taking you through that. But everything we discuss here, equally applicable, whether it was something in the core of the network with VoLTE, whether it's moving on to 5G and slicing. I'll have to be careful I don't make it annoying with the microphone. So to get started, what problems do we have with automation today? Well, first of all, it's a very silo approach. We've got traditional OSS, we've got SDN, and we've got NFV silos. And in traditional OSS, of course, we can do pieces of automation in that's been running for years, but it's very, tends to be very complex. A lot of proprietary models are used, and obviously nothing's tied between fulfillment and assurance. So we have a lot of gaps on the OSS side. SDN, we've got a certain amount of automation built into SDN, but we're still in a place now where what has been deployed is very domain focused in terms of it being maybe a single optical domain, or whether it's going to be an IP MPLS domain, but working across those is still very difficult. And then we have NFV, again, pockets of automation. We're getting a little bit better at that now. We're using models to onboard and try and do life cycle, but the problem with NFV is still many of you probably have deployed today. That day zero configuration and automation is done, but what's beyond that? If you go to day N operations, how do you automate that? Not a lot of companies are actually doing that yet because it's been so hard. And then when we look at the third challenge, you're trying to get more and more vendors into your network. You're trying to mix and match best of breed vendors, which obviously has been difficult because it's been difficult to do, onboarding as we know, but also deploying different cloud platforms, be it your telco cloud, be it public cloud, be it a vendor's cloud, mixing, matching, whether it's container based, whether, you're using a traditional way with VNF. So it's really, a lot of complex environment, and we have a ton of physical out there, of course, and that's not going away for a long time. So that's the key challenges. So what we really need to move forward from that is what we call a new operations environment. And the basis of this is it brings together SDN, NFV, evolved OSS. I say evolved because it has to meet the criteria on the right. But we need to bring together these functions. They need to start acting as one. We can't, continue them as separate silo domains. So, for example, we need obviously new orchestration processes for NFV. We need NFV orchestration. We need VNF management. We need VNF license management. Those three we typically call Mano. So they're some of the new processes. We need SDN, and I'm keeping this right now to the more operational level, so you'll have SDN controllers below. But even at the operational level, you'll have, multi-layer SDN controllers, path computation. But the evolved OSS is all the things you typically see, service orchestration, or whether it's called service order management before, fault configuration, performance management. All these OSS processes need to evolve. They need to change. And they need to change to what we see on the right, because everything now has to be cloud native. What do we mean? Yes, they have to be microservices, but a microservice isn't a service orchestrator. That's a product, if you like, with a whole bunch of proprietary things inside. It's only open if you have a service orchestrator or an NFV orchestrator that's got many different microservices built in which can independently be used. So that's a degree of modularity that we have to get to. So that's one thing, but it also has to be deployed in different cloud platforms, all enabled with DevOps. We need real time. Of course, for the VNF services, they have to be real time. But we also need to, even for the physical network, we'll never need particularly complete, real time for physical, but we need to get it as near as possible, because a lot of our services are absolutely going to be invoked across physical virtual. Standards is going to be incredibly important. When I say standards, I mean things like open APIs. I mean standards-based models. This is one of the problems in the past with trying to automate operations, is we use models, but we use proprietary models. And every vendor has a different model. Every different vendor has a different way of working. We move towards models with Young, for example, at the service level, or Tosca for VNF services. We're massively simplifying the headaches, not just for companies like us in Netcracker, but for service providers, for vendors, everybody. So that's absolutely key. We work to open APIs. We work to data models. That'll help us automate. And then it has to be all AI driven. Of course, we have to go and bring and make these capabilities that can be driven by AI processes. So this is the new ops environment. And we need to move forward, and we need to get to this model as close as possible. Then we can deploy in different ways. We can deploy and architect in the traditional way, where some of these processes are used for anything in the network. It could be for VoLTE, it could be for an SD-WAN service, it could be for anything. But there's another deployment model that's starting to materialize. We're working with a lot of customers on right now. And that's to start, rather than thinking of these operation functions to deal with everything in the network, start to split your network into domains, self-contained domains. And these self-contained domains have the responsibility for that particular domain. So, for example, if an edge domain was SD-WAN or edge services, it would be responsible for everything from provisioning, auto-provisioning that service, through to the CPE. So everything within that domain. You could have a transport domain, anything optical, IP, MPLS, microwave. So you're now starting to think about, how you bring that together as a domain. And then you can have core, which could be NFV core for things like mobile core, or it could be for things like firewalls that reside in a data center. So again, you'll have domains that make sense, but the point is that they're more self-contained, more autonomous. And then they come together with this, what we call cross-domain orchestration. You need an authority above that. You need something that takes care of the service that goes beyond an individual domain. So what I'd like to do is go back to that SD-WAN use case and start to build through how we would grow each of these domains, which OSS functions you would need, which orchestration functions you would need, what role do they have in actually building out these domains to get you to a place where you're really offering not just basic connectivity services, but you're starting to really offer some, value-added services, if you like, and really getting deeper into the B2B organization. So first of all, just to be clear on SD-WAN and where things are today. So many of you, or some of you, may have started deploying SD-WAN. So basically making it easier for enterprises to connect to cloud services or to bring in branch offices much faster. Often deployed over the internet today, can be obviously deployed with MPLS. What we get with SD-WAN today is the ability to do zero-touch provisioning of the CPE device. So that's something all SD-WAN vendors do, and that's something where when the box arrives at the enterprise, it can be plugged in, all the auto configuration is done, very little is needed, you can be up and running really, really fast. Huge benefit, and that's what SD-WAN's being used for today. The problem is, what we're finding is, well, with customers saying, well, that's okay when we've got, maybe 3 or 4 enterprise customers, and they've each got maybe 100 sites. But what happens when we go beyond that? We're struggling because we have this complicated GUI, and in this GUI, we have to change all the configuration manually. We're not sort of getting any prediction from the monitoring side as to what's going on. So we're spending an awful lot of time figuring out what's happening with this service and how to grow it. So we want to automate that. So that's the big problem we find right now. And then the other problem is, well, maybe you want to have more SD-WANders to the portfolio. Enterprises usually don't want to stay with one vendor. They want to have a choice. That's because some are used to certain vendors and, they're used to having them in their environment already. So they want to stick to those vendors. So service providers have to have a choice. You have to have a choice of SD-WAN, but what do you want to do? Build another silo and have these separate silos for each SD-WAN vendor? That's just going to get even more complex. And then what do you do when you want to start adding firewall services that are not from the SD-WAN vendor? You might want to add something from Palo Alto or Fortinet or someone else. So all of that gets complex, and you can imagine the complexity of the OSS BSS in bringing all that together, because every single vendor requires more integrations, et cetera, et cetera. So a lot of issues on that. So if we start with that first stage domain, what do you need to do first of all to bring better automation, to be able to scale, and to be able to evolve that service? So the first thing you need is service orchestration. And when I say service orchestration, just to be clear what that means, it's an evolved OSS component, but it's doing different things than before. So first of all, it has to be model-driven using standard models, like, for example, Yang. So if you use Yang models, then all the vendors conform to the same, then you're really starting to simplify, because the network engineers that are using this understand that model. It's simple for them. It's not a proprietary model from a vendor. And so again, it reduces the complexity greatly. But second, you're not just looking at the activation of it, like in the previous OSS. You're looking at it all through its life cycle. So with service orchestration, now you're able to bring it all the way through from activating it through to scaling, healing, etc. Again, driven by the definition of what's in that model. And it needs to be intent-based. You want to be able to have declarative workflows rather than the predictive ones as before. So a few key things that need to be built into that service orchestrator. You need active inventory. You need active inventory across your entire domain. It needs to discover automatically, real-time, what's in that domain. And when you have these things in place, you've actually started to be able to automate the provisioning of your service. So not the CPE, the actual service. And this is absolutely critical for, many service providers to start scaling that SD-WAN. But now you want to add multiple vendors. Well, you do that easily with a service orchestration platform. Again, using open APIs like MEF, Presto, for example, brand new LSO API that's been defined. Still a little bit of work going on, but it's getting close. And that means every vendor's SD-WAN will use Presto, and the orchestrator will use Presto. Makes it much simpler, much easier for everybody. So bringing on a new vendor into that domain will take a lot less time, be a lot less complex. So much easier then to add more vendors to the portfolio. Simplifies your BSS OS integration, because again, using TMF open APIs to that environment. You're doing it from one system now rather than trying to take OSS and BSS links from every vendor you've got. And then what you want to do, and we don't cover in this presentation, but of course take it to the BSS layer. From a portal, you want to be able to automate that service. You want to be able to choose the service you want. I want SD-WAN between enterprise A and B in these locations, click, and everything flows through. And that's a whole other presentation, but certainly those portal-driven services are critical. So I wanted to spend a bit more time on that one because I think at this stage we've actually shown how you can bring a lot of automation on top of that base service, but SD-WAN typically isn't just over the internet. Typically it has to be over an IP MPLS network as well. You want to be able to leverage applications being high quality over MPLS, and maybe less priority applications over the internet. So what we want to do is look at that transport domain. How can we bring that same automation and bring it into the transport domain? Now the transport domain can be, IP MPLS, optical, microwave. Here I'm sticking to IP MPLS just because we're talking SD-WAN. So you need the same service orchestration and inventory. You need to be able to auto-discover what's in your physical network. You need to do that in real time. So very important that you still need these. But with service orchestration working at the service level, it's not going to work very well if you don't have something that's working at the device level. So you need to add configuration management. You need to add it, but now it's changed from before because, again, it has to be Yang model-based at the device level. Service orchestrator at the service level, Yang at the device level. Now you can really start to automate that physical network that you couldn't do before. So if a customer wants to provision something in the IP MPLS network, you don't have to have a semi-automated SD-WAN and then do lots of manual work to get to your IP MPLS. You can now have a VPN or any service that crosses the two domains, and you can make it seamless at the top. Of course, you need your assurance built in, so you fault performance, because what you want to do now is run everything in closed loop with the full life cycle. So you want to be able to do everything from instantiating that to scaling to healing, and now you've got everything running together with those new components. So the next one I want to build is our NFV domain, because with SD-WAN, it is just connectivity. So you want to start adding new types of services on top, different types of firewalls, WAN accelerators. So now what we do is essentially we have the same environment as before. You still need a configuration management, because now this configuration manager can actually start to do the day-end provisioning for those VNF services that you couldn't do with just a Mano. The Mano will do the day 0, but not the day N. So now with a configuration manager that works physical virtual, you can do both. But we need to add that Mano environment. So we'll start with the VNF level, VNF manager and the VNF license manager. So now with these, you can start to work with any third party. You're not tied to the SD-WAN vendors and what they do. You can bring any third party, and you can have a generic VNF manager that works with any of these partners. You can now use modeling with Tosca. Tosca is very, very good for the VNF and NFV type services, whereas Yang is better for the network type services. Tosca is absolutely perfect for the VNF type services. Get very well defined now, is advanced significantly from where it was before. So the standard models for this do help you define, a lot of the life cycle that we need to do. And then you need your NFV orchestrator on top, because you're actually doing network services, not just VNF services. So now you've built that whole Mano domain. You can do the life cycle, and you can do that for the data center, but you can do it for all the VNFs you're going to run on universal CPEs if that's the direction you're going for the future. So you're starting to build a nice streamlined architecture where, again, you're building this automation in these different domains. You're using orchestration components, but you're evolving some of your OSS components as well. So now that you've built these 3 domains, what's very important is how they basically talk to each other. So you need to build a cross-domain or have a cross-domain orchestrator that deals with services that cross the 2. So again, if you have SD-WAN that crosses the edge domain and the transport domain between the internet and IP MPLS, the cross-domain orchestrator will be the authority that defines that order and then sends the instructions through to the individual domains. But the individual domains will be the one that provisions the service and auto-provisions the service. So you don't need to do that at the top level. So again, you're really simplifying your architecture, and it's the same, let's say, microservices that are being invoked at these levels. It's just that the cross-domain, they may be doing things that are relevant to the cross-service, like federated inventory, for example, whereas at the domain level, they're only involved in what's happening at that level. But all nice, unique microservices that are built on that. Then we can take that one step further and we can say, well, why stop at VNF services? Why not start to build in some of the cloud-based services? Microsoft Office, for example, Cisco WebEx, all the stuff that enterprises are really keen in bringing into their offer, and they're already using these cloud services today. They can be bundled into this same offer, bundled with connectivity. Again, easy to automate that from the cross-domain orchestrator, using, again, standard APIs to order and do the licensing and request the services from those cloud platforms. And then, wrong way. And then last is to your partners too. They're having an automated way of bringing your partners into this whole ecosystem. So in summary, to really automate, and going back to the question at the beginning, what's the role of OSS and orchestration in making this happen? The only way to automate is we have to move to this evolved OSS environment. And it has to have the, combines SDN, combines SD-NFV, combines OSS processes, but it has to be cloud native. They have to be real time. They have to be AI driven. So this is a new environment that we need to build to be able to, operate across those domains. But we have to focus on open APIs and standard models as well. This is going to make everybody's life simpler, and I feel like we're very close to that. So even in whether it's Yang models, Tosca models, I think the industry is aligning on those areas. Standard definitions are happening for certain services right now. But of course, we need to move faster. And think about domains. Think about splitting your network in domains so that you can start to automate what's important for you now and then gradually build that up over time to this full end-to-end automation. Don't have to solve every problem now or buy something that has perhaps too much functionality in the network for what you need today. So build it in domains and just use the pieces that you need to do the job that you need. And of course, we use SD-WAN as the example because it's easier sometimes explaining with something rather than just using abstract. But all of these principles completely apply, whether it's to the other services in the network. Okay, thank you very much. Any questions?